God gave rock and roll to you. Gave rock and roll to you. Put it in the soul of everyone.
Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Area 312 Rock and Metal Podcast. Here with my hosts Mike Tift and Rex Smetzer and yours truly. Friends, it is a distinct privilege and honor today. We are welcoming from the incredible Messiah Prophet, the one and only Joe Shirk on bass and David Thunder on drums. Welcome, guys.
I was glad to be here.
Good to be here. Good to talk with you.
Yeah.
Great to talk with you, and again, such a privilege. You guys are so revered. This is actually my original tape from 1986. If anybody remembers cassette tapes.
Oh yeah.
Here's the first album that Messiah
Yep.
Prophet, of course, put out. But guys, we just always start off at square one, and there's a lot we'd like to ask. We'll just if you guys are ready to rock, we'll roll with it.
Sounds good.
I'm good to go. I'm good to
I
go.
about said ready to walk. So Joe and David, did y'all grow up in musical households, whether the radio playing or perhaps people in your household performing on musical instruments?
You want to go
Go
first?
ahead. Yeah, you go ahead, Joe.
No. I grew up in a old order Mennonite culture, and musical instruments, except for a very few, were not really allowed. I had a harmonica, which I loved, and people were always singing. But yeah, that's about as far as it went for me. So harmonica to this, what can you say?
And never the rebellious rocker. Joe rebelled from the Mennonite. He became that rocker. Heathen.
Got to start somewhere.
Heathen. No, I'm teasing. How about you, David?
Yeah, I actually did come from a musical background. And my little story is that my mother and her two sisters used to sing, and they're from the Midwest, Iowa. They used to sing, and then when she married my dad, and then they had a family. We sang as kids in church, and we actually recorded an album of our family, and of course I was played drums on that, and I actually learned to play drums. Well, my first teacher was my mother, because she played drums in the worship team at our church back in the late 60s, early 70s. So that's where I got my kind of kicking the can, to play the cans. And yeah, so, and that's where that grew from. And we'd go out and sing at like churches, and we'd sing at campgrounds and for like Kiwanis clubs and Elks and that kind of thing, and we did like patriotic music and kind of Americana songs and like some gospel songs, and it was a lot of fun. It kind of really gave me that in my blood that this is what I want to do, and I have aunts and uncles that live all over the United States. So every other summer, we would go on tour, and we traveled, we ping-ponged all across the United States, and we would, stop at our different aunts and uncles and cousins' places, and they'd hook us up somewhere. And that's where, that's a great fond memory of my childhood.
Now, obviously, both of you grew up around faith then. But with you, Joe, I'm really interested in this, having grown up in this Mennonite setting. How did you go from that kind of setting to becoming interested in like rock and metal and all that? How did that happen?
It wasn't easy. I always loved music, and my two older brothers are actually quite a few years ahead of me. They had started listening to bluegrass, country, bit of the Eagles, that kind of thing, and I loved it. And kind of a weird story, but I found a cassette tape laying along the road one time. I was riding my bike, and the cassette tape said Rush 2112 on it. I had no idea what this was, but I popped it in my little cassette recorder, and I didn't know what I was listening to, but I loved it. So that was my introduction to rock and roll. And I kind of I'll make it real short, but I kind of got into the wrong crowd for quite a few years in my teen years, and listening to a lot of heavy rock, metal, and thought it'd be so cool to be in a band, And I picked up a guitar and later on a bass and stuff. But when I became a Christian, I bumped into some guys. They were looking for a bassist. And I said, well, I don't have any experience, but that didn't really matter at that point. So ended up being a bass player before I really knew how to play bass. It was one of those deals. Long story in a short form there.
Sure. So now, of course, having grown up in that Mennonite environment, and now you just said when I became a Christian, I got together with these guys. So describe what that was like for you, going from the upbringing,
good question,
being Mennonite, to actually telling your story and saying when I became a Christian. Kind of flesh that out a little bit.
Yeah, there's a bit of a gap there, I should say. Yeah, paradox. Very good. Thank you. Mennonites, they're wonderful people, a lot of them. We weren't really taught a lot of what I believe now, as far as, salvation and all that. And it was more, it was presented as a set of rules and ways of conducting your life. A lot of my cousins drove horse and buggies. My parents did not, but we were next door to that. So it looked like basically a set of rules to conduct your life by, and nothing much else. And it really didn't make sense to me. I would always question the rules. I still do. But why do we have to do this? Or why do we have to do that? Why can't we do this? And they really, the answers were, well, it's tradition. And that didn't sit well with me. I was kind of a black sheep, I guess. And so then, like I said, I went off the wrong direction. But when I came back, I started getting some, better answers. And so I guess, does that fill in the...
Well, how did that happen, though? I mean,
did some of your friends, Joe, kind of like lead you into, a real relationship with Jesus in that, and kind of like show you, like it's not all about rules and whatnot, and there's grace and whatnot involved in that, and forgiveness of your sins?
No, I didn't really have any friends like that at the time. I had, I was using stuff that I shouldn't, and it was starting to affect my health, and I could kind of feel that. And I remember in my apartment the one time I just said a quick prayer to God. I said, this is becoming damaging, and some way out, I guess I was asking for. And I just, on a whim, if I'm remembering this correct, I took off, the next morning was a Sunday, and I ended up at a church, and I just kind of kept on going, and ran from there. Lost a lot of, basically replaced most of my friends. Now, since that, some of them are also, Christian, and we're friends again. But yeah, there was an entire crowd that was basically replaced at that time.
I got a question for you, Joe.
Yeah, everything by now.
But here's a question that I don't think I know the answer to. When did that happen? That you'd mentioned you were at your apartment. Was that, were you still playing then, or how did that transpire?
No, that was actually before I really knew how to play guitar, bass, or anything like that.
Okay. But you
I
were
would-
out of your parents' house then.
Yes, yeah.
And what age?
I would have been, I believe, 21, 20, 21. I don't know an
okay.
exact date anymore, but yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and are you willing to say what church you landed in where you started to get?
Yes, it's called the Worship Center, and it's not too far from here in Pennsylvania. And
Okay.
I went there for a couple years, and led into different things, but that's where I started.
Okay.
What about you, David? When did your journey with Christ first begin?
Well, from an early age, and I remember growing up, in a house, a Christian family, and there was a lot of rules and regulations at that time. My dad was very strict, very strong, convicted man, and he got that from his dad, my grandfather, who pretty much became the black sheep of his family because he accepted Christ as a savior, where the rest of his brothers and his parents were not believers. And my grandfather, gave his life to the Lord, and I mean, it was like there was a line in the sand. So my dad grew up in that very stern, strict environment, and as kids we weren't allowed to go roller skating, or we couldn't go to the movies. Of course,
Familiar?
no school dances. Heaven forbid, as a guy or even as a girl, were to have her ears pierced. In fact, when I was 16 years old, I got my girlfriend at that time. I paid for her to get her ears pierced as a Christmas gift. And my parents were furious at me for paying for her to get her ears pierced. And then I ended up getting my ears pierced with three in each ear.
Wow. Wow.
But I gave my life to the Lord, and remember getting baptized in a creek. That's the church I grew up in, which was Pentecostal, and we got baptized in a creek at this farmer that went to our church, and I remember it well. I was 14.
So, gentlemen, try growing up being Baptist, and the satanic panic hits, and they tell you to avoid bands like this because
Exactly.
Christian rock really isn't of Christ. That's how I grew up. I did want to ask you, David, really quick before we move on. You mentioned about your family's album. Can you tell us what the name of that album is, and is it still out there somewhere?
I don't know. It was the name of the album was. I'm sorry. Let me get a little composure here. The name of the album was the name of the single, which was a song that my brother Tom wrote, and it was called "What a Way to Start a Day." That was the name of it, and it's kind of funny because looking back on it now, the cover photo of our family, we were walking through the woods, all at different, distances away from each other, some closer, some further, and we're walking through the woods, and it's like, yeah, boy, this is what a way to start out a day. You're walking through the woods.
So David, on the music side of things, with how you're telling us how your childhood was, then how did you, when did you start, listening to bands and stuff like that, and figuring out, hey, there's this whole world of music out there?
Yeah, well, that's a good story. I mean, it's a good question rather, and because growing up in a musical family, my dad was the song leader at our church. My mother played drums. So we had our little family band, and we would travel around. And then, as us kids, 5 kids, were, starting to leave the house, I started playing in just different odds and end bands, and some of them were secular, but then I started, because of my convictions, started to, play with Christians, other Christians and stuff. So one of the first bands that really, we got together and started, doing some recording and playing out, but it was still very local, very local. It was a band called Club J. And that stood for Jesus, Club J. And that was Club J was kind of a new wave pop, band. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And at the same time, my brother Dan was actually the lead singer for another local band that was doing very well for themselves. It's called Damascus, was their name. And they were kind of a boy band. There was like 8 guys or 6 guys or something, but it was all, and they all looked cute, and did the whole thing with that kind of approach. And I had played in another band early called Scan, or The Scan. And it was basically, the origin of that name was, looking out at the world, and trying to scan what's right and what's wrong. And that's actually the band I was in when I wrote the song "The Friend" that's on our album. I was in that band when I wrote that song, and then I brought it to Messiah Prophet, and they loved it. And of course, we did it much better than Scan did it, But I, at the time, I was early 20s, and I was playing in Club J. We actually went, a couple of guys from the band and I went to see Messiah Prophet open for Stryper at McCaskey High School in Lancaster, PA. And I remember being in that audience, and I said to our player, yeah, that was the tour. It was the Rock the Flock tour. I remember saying to my buddy Marlon Hart, who was playing with me in Club J, I said, yeah, they're pretty good. They're all right, but you know what they could use? They could use a better drummer, somebody like me. and we laughed about it, blah blah blah. And not 6 or 8 months later, I was I came home from work. At that time, I was living in a house with 4 other guys. There's 5 guys renting a house together. My brother Dan was one of the guys. Another one of the guys was a DJ on a local, rather popular Christian station in this area, WJTL. And one of the DJs was living with us. There was a note on our dining room table that Dean Pellman had called. And I saw that note, and I just assumed it was for, this DJ friend of ours that, was renting the home, with us. And then he said, no, that call's for you. And I'm like, come on. And so I called Dean and had a great chat on the phone. And he was aware of me. I don't know how, but he was aware of me and heard good things about me, and asked if I would like to, audition or come, sit in with him sometime. And so I packed up my kit and went up to Lebanon, where Charlie and Andy and Dean all lived in that area, Lebanon, Pennsylvania, that area. And we were, that first practice that I showed up at was like a community center. It wasn't somebody's house. It wasn't like, it was like a community center. And, I set my kit up and they liked my drum set and they said, we're just going to start playing and you play what you feel. And, we just hit it off. We just hit it off very, very well straight away. And so they offered me, the position to play drums with them. And I took it. And then, of course, I had to tell the guys from Club J that, I'm going to be playing with Messiah Prophet now. And they were okay with it. They got another guy playing drums, and he's still a very good drummer. And that turned out well for them. It turned out well for me, but not like 2 months later, after playing a couple of gigs, local gigs, with Messiah Prophet, we went to Canada for New Year's Eve, and we played at this club, pretty large club. I remember it because there was 2 floors, and the stage was like elevated between the 2 floors. So I'm, of course, and then the drums were elevated a little bit more, and I could look down at the people here, and I could look up and see the people up here. It was pretty wild. It was pretty wild. But it was like this, I don't know, culture shock, if you will, that from playing, local and playing in small bands, around the Lancaster, Pennsylvania area, and then going up to Canada for New Year's Eve and playing at this club with hundreds, probably maybe close to 800, 900 people or something like that. And I remember being on the bus driving up there with headphones on, listening to Rock the Flock over and over and over and over again. And Dean was like, do you get it now? And he goes, and I'm like, and I was like, I was trying to like dissect the songs. Because to me, I guess I'm, OCD in that there has to be a rhyme and a rhythm to how things are put together and how they flow and stuff. And so I was talking to Dean about that, breaking the sounds down to these different things. And he said, and I remember he would always say, listen again, just listen again, and we got up there and it was just hysterical just to be on stage playing with Messiah Prophet, who I had seen twice already in concert. And now I'm their drummer. It was an experience in those, first early days.
What year was that?
That would have been 80. I want to say 80. Well, what's the date on that Rock the Flock tape you have?
It was it was released in 84.
Okay, it was just after that. So it would have been late 84. Because it was New Year's then of going from 84 into 85 that we played in Canada. Because then that January, like a couple of weeks after we came back from Canada, we went in the studio and started recording. The first song was Master of the Metal.
Okay.
And what an album that turned out to be. So, Joe, you and Brian Nykerry then, before coming into Messiah Prophet, from my understanding, you two were in a band together.
Yes, that was my very first band. It was called Rock Angel.
Okay.
And not sure how long, maybe 2 years, I'll say, something like that. And we had opened for Messiah Prophet, I believe. David, do you remember twice at least, maybe more?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
I remember one club in Lebanon.
A club in Lebanon. We did an outdoor show that we opened for you. If my memory serves right, there was actually a show where we opened. Brian and I rushed backstage, changed a few clothes, and came out and played with you guys. We were kind of, doing a double shift there. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's kind of off the question there, but that was the band we were in, was called Rock Angel. and we had no recordings out. We were just playing, coffee shops or wherever we could, really.
So because David mentioned how he got the call from Dean Pellman, of course, from this version of Messiah Prophet, as they progressed. And Joe, did David, or did the Messiah Prophet guys at the time, I don't know if David was in the band yet. I think I'm going to guess that he was then, based upon what he said.
Yeah.
Did they just kind of take note of you and Brian, and an opportunity lent itself, and they said, hey, come on board with us?
Yes. Dean Pellman was looking to move on. Life was calling him somewhere else. And so they needed a bassist. And we were talking about this the other day, David. I forget. I know I was reluctant.
What is there's your memory and my memory, and but they do fit together, because of incidences that, from your story didn't have incidences from my story, but when you hear the whole story, it makes sense.
Well, I was reluctant to leave without Brian. We were kind of stage buddies. He taught me how to play bass, really, how to be in a band. And that was part of it. And what was the other part we were talking about that they ended up getting both of us?
Well, what happened is, right, we had heard about you guys and of course, played together. So there was already a connection there of knowing each other and knowing that the style, would mesh well. When it got to the point where Dean was talking about, stepping away from the band and needing a bass player, the conversation was about making the band another person stronger. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So we would have a fuller sound. So
adding a guitar into the mix, and
a second guitar. Yeah. And I remember going to see you guys, Rock Angel,
right,
at a little, it was like a youth center or something, was it?
Yeah, that's mostly what we played at. Might have been the one in Ephrata, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I went in and I saw you guys play. I was duly impressed. Again, just now to see like your whole show. And I talked with both you and Brian afterwards, and then like the next week, but nothing was said really. And like the next week, Dean and Andy and Charlie and I got together and we're talking about different possibilities. And I said that I went to see these guys and they're better than we thought. I didn't mean that. I mean, they will do.
It's all right.
They would fit perfectly with us.
Right.
And so somebody, made the call to Joe and Brian, and I remember meeting them because I was the last one to see them. And they were like, well, you remember what they look like. So they I remember we were sitting outside on Dean's like back porch, front porch, and
I remember.
And that's it. It was a back porch because I saw you and Brian walking like through the lawn, and I'm like, oh, there they are. And so that discussion started then.
And I remember the other part of it was Brian was kind of hesitant to move. He was our vocalist and he really liked being vocals. And he was definitely not going to try and step in on Charlie. I mean, nobody's going to do that. And so he was a little hesitant at first. And like I said, I was hesitant to leave without him. So anyway, it all worked out and we both ended up going there. So.
Well, Brian got to sing lead on For Whom Does the Bell Toll, and he and Charlie traded off lead on Battle Cry.
Yep.
Now, David, you mentioned The Friend, which you had written, which brings us to the Matt. Let's talk about this iconic album right here. Matt, Mike, put yours up. You have the CD. People can see it better. I've still got the tape.
It's a masterpiece. I'm just going to say it. It's a masterpiece.
Yes. So.
Thank you.
And
Thank you very much.
If I may say, in my opinion, this is the single coolest Christian metal cover ever put out.
Yep. ever.
Well, thank you.
Quite, I was modeling for that, you know.
No, there is a story behind that too. If you hold up Rock the Flock and Master of the Metal next to each other, it's that same guy, and that's actually modeled after Andy Strauss. That's who that is supposed to represent.
Definitely on Rock the Flock. Definitely.
Yeah. But
His
and then
guitar, his pose, everything.
yeah. But what's interesting is we released Master of the Metal, and that summer, Kansas released an album with a guy leaning back, holding a guitar, and like he's welding it or
Forging it.
you know,
Mhm.
forging it out of steel on this anvil. This the same as ours. Ours is more, I'll say more. Ours is more graphic, and theirs was more like 2D.
So,
Maybe 3 colors, and it's like, wait, they can't do that.
well, David, that was the Power album. I'm a big Kansas fan, and that was the Power
Okay.
album, and I bought
Yeah.
that when it came out the same year. But that was the return of Steve Walsh back to the band. But you know what? I never equivocated the two. I never thought that they were trying to emulate the other. Plus, you guys say Andy, I'm going to say Jesus. I mean, look, he's chiseling a guitar, man. On that anvil. So
I think that's what most people got from that, really.
yeah. So anyway,
how did you guys get signed to Pure Metal? How did that all happen before we get into the album?
Yeah.
It was before I was part of that scene.
Yeah, and that happened with really with Dean and Andy and Charlie at the time, with me. But since I was a new player, I really wasn't involved in much of the mechanics. And we had a tour manager / agent, and that was worked out with them. I don't personally know how it went from basically a self-produced album there with Rock the Flock to being signed with Pure Metal. I mean, I was there when it happened, but I don't know the technicality, the mechanics of how that happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
David and Joe, was Master of the Metal along with Saints Times End, weren't those the first 2 albums that were put on the Pure Metal label?
Yes, they were.
I think so, yeah.
Mhm.
And as we already mentioned, Master of the Metal, it truly is a masterful metal album. Couple questions about this, gentlemen. How long did it take from top to bottom to record this, if you can give me a ballpark? And then in 1986, what kind of a budget were you guys working with for this album?
Well,
David, all yours. I came in the last last few weeks of that recording. So
yeah, but
a lot of that
but Joe's bass tracks are on all the songs. Dean played bass for 1 or 2 songs when we went in the studio after that, a couple of weeks after that New Year's Eve gig, and when we recorded Master of the Metal. But if memory serves, we kind of replaced Joe's bass lines for Dean's. Or maybe we did for that one song. I'm not 100% sure, but wait, my mind just what was the question again?
I was just asking David about what kind of a budget you guys were working with.
Oh, right.
And about
Again,
how long it took.
yeah, again, because I was a new player in the band, the budget wasn't something I was privy to at the time.
Gotcha.
I know there was a lot of conversation about that with, with our manager and with Andy and Charlie and Dean. And then we recorded with this phenomenal guy, Bill Grabowski.
Oh yeah,
who had done
that
work
was
with,
amazing.
Yeah, he had done work with Whitney Houston and Bon Jovi prior to working with us, so they were aware of all that, the monies. I wasn't aware of that. But as far as recording, we started in January of '85, and we just recorded that one song. And then it was like a couple of months later, we went back into the studio and recorded the rest of it. But altogether from that recording in January and then the late spring, late spring of that same year, we went back in. It was probably about 2 months that we were there.
Well,
only on the weekends.
Yeah, that sounds right from my remembering of it.
They were long weekends. We'd go up on a Friday night and we would sleep in the studio and
yeah, I remember that.
record all day long, Saturday, and stay over, again, and then do some stuff on Sunday, and then we'd come back the next weekend.
Sleeping on the floor and eating out of the mini market down the street. Yeah.
Did you gentlemen know upon hearing the playback? I don't know, I know in the studio you hear the playback on individual songs, but I don't know if you guys had a playback session or a playback party or whatever from top to bottom. But upon hearing the completion of this album, guys, did you all know or think that y'all had something very special on your hands?
Well, I know I did. And thinking back to one of my first albums, rock albums that I ever bought, and I think I was 16 maybe, was the Resurrection Band. And so I was clearly aware of, Glenn and Wendy and that kind of roots blues. There you go. Yeah. The kind of the blues, and in your face kind of stuff that they were doing. So I had kind of a bit of a barometer, if you will, of knowing what good albums, sound like. And I thought, wow, when we played it back, it was, and even today, even now, I mean, I can still play all the parts and I can still sing the songs, do my background vocals and stuff. But I still listen to it and think, I can't believe that was us. It was just so big and so powerful. And and when we went on tour, we didn't have background tracks to beef our sound or anything. We played it with the 5 of us guys, and we sounded in concert. We sounded like we did on the album.
Yeah, I think I remember being really impressed with the sound.
Yeah.
Well, it was a huge difference from Rock the Flock to that one on, production and everything. And
yeah,
I don't know if I realized, I mean, like now you guys are saying this is the greatest, album, this and that. And I don't think that was in my mind back then. I mean, it was definitely impressive, but yeah.
Well, I will agree with you, Joe. Like for 1986, for like quote Christian bands, for the most part, the production was superb. And as I said earlier, I would compare this equally. I mean, it's on par with anything, say, Iron Maiden, Dio, anything secular like that. That stood up production wise, sound quality wise, against any of those bands too. I mean, it was on par with all of that musically
Yeah. Well, thank you. And
production wise.
a lot of that, I believe we can throw credit to Bill Grabowski.
Yeah,
He
absolutely.
was absolutely amazing and professional at what he was doing. We
And
were
he
fortunate,
actually,
very fortunate to get him.
yeah, and he actually played guitar on
That's right. Which one
the
was that?
album. I think it.
It's listed in
Um,
here.
It is
Uh,
listed. Yeah, I forgot.
I don't know if I can read it anymore, guys. It's so small. It's amazing how I used to be able to do this back in the day.
Yeah, arms just get shorter every year or so.
Oh, I know. Guys, I really, I can't well, that's additional background vocals, additional guitar work on Hit and Run by Bill
There it is.
Grabowski, and on Heavy Metal Thunder by Alexander Paul. Boy, that was tough. Woo.
I feel your pain, brother. I
So
really do.
let me throw out another name at you guys.
Yeah.
And I'm glad Mike brought this up because I concur. And there's to those of our friends out there in Christian metal land, there's a lot of wonderful Christian metal and Christian rock art. But I'm going to agree with Mike. You can shoot me down if you want. I do think this is the best cover ever. Jack, am I pronouncing it right? Althouse?
Yes, I believe so.
Jack Althouse is credited as the illustrator for this cover. Guys, I'm one of these that I feel like a cover is very important, an album cover, and I feel like the music's important, and it's all one big package. And the beauty of this, and I'm sorry I just have the cassette, but the beauty of this is that the cover matches the contents within. Thank you, Mike. And the contents within matches the cover. It's one terrific package. So, Joe and David, I bring that up all to ask. Had you all seen the cover before the album went to print? And what were your thoughts upon seeing this iconic cover for the first time?
I remember being in Andy's living room and seeing the artwork, and it was probably at least 3 foot square, this big thing. And I remember walking out very close to it and like just checking out the lines and the detail and the colors. And I was like super impressed.
Yeah, I remember. I really liked it.
Yeah.
I was a big sci-fi fan back in the day, and this somehow struck a note with me. This kind of barbaric kind of guy. He's beating out technology out of, metal or rock.
Yeah.
I liked it.
I was telling Joe, I didn't get to see you guys until Metal Edge, circa 1987. They did a spread. It had you guys and Striking and Leviticus and Saints. And I'm trying to think of who else might have been in there. Guys, I was just wanting to know about that experience. How were you, because evidently you guys were making waves. They contacted you guys. So, how did they know to contact you all, and what was that like doing that spread for Metal Edge back in the day?
Wow. That's really picking my brain.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one.
Yeah, no, I do remember the interview. One thing I do remember that when it was published, it had our initials prior to what we said, it'd be AS for Andy Strauss and CC for Charlie Clark and DT for myself. And of course, if you reread that article, you can see that they do most of the talking. There's only a couple of times that I speak up and say anything, because at that time I was still still fresh, in the band, maybe 6 months into the band. But a lot of that, and I almost hate to admit that I don't know as much of the, I'll say the background or the mechanics, of Messiah Prophet, but I do know that it was pretty much through Ray Fletcher and Andy and Dean that had that contact. And
Well, you guys were certainly in '86. I mean, you guys hit the scene hard, just like the Christ figure hitting that guitar on the anvil there. And Messiah Prophet was making waves. I actually had Master of the Metal before I found Rock the Flock. This just hit hard and hit fast and hit first for me. Guys, with Messiah Prophet gaining ground, regarding the time and the wages and the road trips and all that, how difficult was it to be in '86 in a prominent Christian metal band? Were you guys having to work here and then just play out dates as you could? And any Spinal Tap moments you can share and road stories and things that stick out?
Oh, we got a ton of them.
I'm all ears.
Well, I know for myself, I can answer for myself. I was signed up with a temp service. So I remember, Ray telling us, to go get part-time jobs or whatever, and, practice and write new material and all that. And so, so that when we had several dates lined up for a tour, whether it's, down south towards Florida or in the Midwest or out west or Southwest or New England, we could pretty much go on the fly. So I know that's what I did. As far as
I did the same thing. It was we were
and then
full-time band, but not really a full-time band.
Yeah. But I remember, going out and playing, and we played a lot of times. Most of the times we would headline, and there'd be like local bands opening for us, and there were some times that we did, a bunch of times. I think as that engine started rolling, that we ended up playing with other bands that you've mentioned already, Barren Cross and Blood Good, White Cross. Not sure who else we played with.
But I can't remember. There's quite a bunch of them.
Yeah. We played. I remember playing a metal fest out in California. It was hosted by Pastor Bob Beeman, and Joe and I we had the pleasure of staying with him at his house for about a week. I think about a week we lived with him. Yeah.
Sleeping on the floor just like the studio.
Yeah. And but I do have a funny story. This will tie into one of those Spinal Tap stories. We played with Blood Good somewhere in the Midwest. I don't remember, but somewhere in the Midwest. And after the show, we're tearing down and loading up our respective buses and trailers and stuff. And someone found a watch and knew that it wasn't any of theirs. It was either somebody from Messiah Prophet or somebody from Blood Good. And, none of us claimed it was ours. Blood Good had already left. And I remember the phone. It was a Casio phone, and it had a little calculator on it, and it had phone lists in it, contact phone numbers and stuff. So we looked in it. We looked in it, and figured out that that watch belonged to David Safiro. So I took it upon myself to protect that watch, and so I wore it from that show in the Midwest that we did with them until we, like, maybe a couple of weeks later, 2-3 weeks later, we knew, we had another gig lined up with them, and it was out in California. And I remember walking up to David, and and giving him his watch back. And he was like, oh, I can't believe I lost it. And I thought it was gone forever. And, thanks for getting it back and, keeping it for me and all that. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Very cool.
I don't know if he'll remember that, but, that's that's one Spinal Tap moment. I know another Spinal Tap moment. It's kind of continuing Spinal Tap moments were we had this old tour bus that was, nefarious for breaking down, every other week it seemed. And that was sucked if we were out on the road, out west or up north somewhere, and we had a guy that we hooked up with from Ohio, beautiful man by the name of Rudy Richter, and just really took us under his wing and sponsored us, and put a lot of backing into us. Rudy Richter's story is that he invented a car part for Corvettes, and him and his dad were making this part in their garage there in just outside of New Philly, Ohio.
Oh,
And
my neck of the woods.
Really?
I'm sorry.
That's in my neck of the woods.
Yeah. And he ended up
Spent a lot of
selling.
time there.
Yeah, we did. Yes, we did. It was like it was really our second home. We stayed there, had Bible studies, practice our music, and Rudy was a great mentor for us. But he ended up, selling his invention to Chevrolet, and but he really supported us, and I give huge props to him. But one time our bus broke down, and I'm pretty certain it was in Texas, and we had to leave it. We could come back.
I think it actually broke down in Ohio, but we needed to get to Texas. We were trying to get to Texas.
That's it. No, you're right. So he lent us. Well, no, he drove. He drove his. At that time, it was a monster pickup truck.
4-door pickup, 6 tires on it, one of those giant ones, and
yeah, it's huge. And he had this massive trailer from hauling vets and and other stuff. And so we loaded all our gear in the trailer and some of the gear in the back of the pickup truck. And and the 5 of us plus Rudy, six guys. And I don't know if Eddie Martin was with us or another guy was
I think
with us.
Eddie was with us that time. I think.
Helping to run sound and lights and be our tech guy at the time. So you have basically 7 or 8 guys in a
too many to fit inside a truck cab. That's what it was.
So 2 guys sat in the bed of the pickup truck, and I remember it pouring down, raining and thunder and just nuts. Craziest weather you could come across, and we would just keep our backs up against the cab, and the rain and whatever would pass over us, and we get a little wet, but it was just one of those stories. It's like, can you believe this is even happening?
Yeah.
This is crazy. And then the really crazy thing was, somebody misplaced the map, or because we didn't have GPS back then, and you couldn't even MapQuest anything. It was handwritten down, or looking at a map that you unfold and stuff. Maybe somebody was holding it upside down or something. But we missed our exit, and we drove 10 hours.
It's easy to do in Texas.
Yeah, 10 hours out of our way, until we realized this town isn't coming up. It's not showing up on any signs. And and then we realized what we did.
Were we heading for Odessa, Texas? I believe. I think it was Odessa we were trying to get to.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And that's where we hung out with this pastor down there too. I can't remember his name now, but I remember we used to call him. We used to joke with him about. I remember calling him.
Yeah, he was in Missouri, I think.
I remember joking.
Norfie, Pastor Norfie. Was that the one?
Yeah. Well, we joked around and called him. What was it? It was Your Holiness, the Most Right Reverend Pastor Norfie.
Yes, I remember that. He loved it.
My goodness. Oh my goodness.
We call him Your Holiness, the Most Right Reverend Pastor.
Sort of a Spinal Tap story of that same old bus. The fuel pickup inside the fuel tank fell off and was laying in the bottom of the tank. That, I think, was in Texas too, somewhere where it was very hot and very flat and the sun was merciless. I remember all that. And we were sitting beside the road and these 18-wheelers were just shaking us going past. And one of us had the bright idea. All of a sudden, we pulled the overflow hose from the radiator. They weren't sealed systems back then. And we pushed that over the remaining stub of the fuel pickup, dropped it down in the fuel tank. We might have tied something to it to weight it down. I'm not sure. And don't you know, that old bus fired up and we got into town like that. So, make do with what you have, right?
So were you, Joe, were you saying that you ran out of fuel and you had to let it in?
No, we had a full tank, but the thing that reaches down to the bottom of the tank, the pickup, had broke off inside the tank. So we were out of fuel with a full fuel tank.
Oh goodness.
So they had a MacGyver moment there.
It was very MacGyver, yeah.
There you go, a little chewing gum.
Might have been in there too. I'm not sure.
David, let me ask you, because I talking about traveling up in Rex's neck of the woods and going to Texas and all. Me being in Arkansas, I never saw anything about Messiah Prophet coming to my neck of the woods. But in doing my research for you guys, because I'm looking online and there is some classic footage of you guys. It's kind of hard to come by, but you were doing this trick with the drumsticks in your mouth and doing something.
Yeah.
Tell me about the drumstick trick.
Wow. That's.
Did you bring a pair along?
I didn't, and I'm looking around for something that I can.
I don't have drumsticks here. I don't.
There's two walking sticks here.
Well, have at it.
let me try something. I honestly don't know how that came about, other than probably just again, probably my OCD or kicking in, but or being bored or something, but let's see if I can do it. Something like that?
Yeah, yes. That gives us the idea. But friends, you can look it up. I don't remember who had it, but there's some classic Messiah Prophet footage that's out there. And Dave has his sticks, and he's like, basically, you can hear the melody to a song as he's hitting the drumsticks, and it's cool.
Yeah.
It's a little bit a variation of that Australian. What's that thing called?
The didgeridoo.
Yes, that one.
Yeah.
Percussion version.
Yeah. There's actually some videos out there that I'm aware of, but I don't have copies of, that I would love to get a hold of. And I know I remember one where I think it was with that His Holiness, the Most Right Reverend Pastor Norfie. we actually played, they booked us into a roller skating rink, and our stage was built in the center of the roller skating rink towards the one side of the roller rink. So we had this kind of panned out, space for people to hang out and
Yeah, I remember that. Man,
but there was
memory lane here.
There was a room, and maybe it might have been a party room or something that we used as our green room. And we did an interview back, at that time. And I would love to see the footage of that. I know there's another interview that we did. It was after we played in Chicago at this huge club. There was an interview afterwards, and we had just got done doing a show with Bloodgood, and I remember the guys asking about that, what our experience was with them, and and meeting those guys. And I remember doing that interview, and like the one microphone I was holding wasn't working right, and then so they tried another one, and all of this is on that tape. So we tried this one, and I remember at one point I was like holding the two mics, and I was like, two mics in one,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's other footage out there of interviews and us playing that were caught that I would love to have access to them. So if you or any of your fans that listen and watch you guys, or if you guys have any contacts and know of any of those other ones that I'm referring to, you can contact us through Area 312.
And I do have a connection with Joe, and I would be happy, friends, if you do have any footage, because it's hard to come by, and we love these guys. All of us love Messiah Prophet, and wonderful guys. And so please let us know, and we will pass it on to Joe, who will pass it on to David, and
yeah,
you guys connected.
I do have this, which is a video of our concert at Cornerstone over at Flavor. Or no, oh no, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. No, this is kind of one of those weird things. It's on here. It says Cornerstone '86, which was Glenn and Wendy Kaiser's festival that they started out there with Japuza USA in Chicago. We played there, but I think the actual footage on here is from our concert that we did at Flava Fest over in Holland. And I have that, but some of this other stuff I don't have, and I'd love to have it.
Gotcha. Well, gentlemen, Joe and David, after Master of the Metal, I kept waiting for the next great Messiah Prophet album, and I kept waiting, and it never arrived. And it is okay to inquire, and we're not ones to dig up dirt here or sling mud, but it's nice with what can be shared and shared accurately via those who have been there. What led to the disbanding of the classic? This is what most of us consider classic. As we knew you guys, what led to the disbanding of the classic Master of the Metal band lineup?
I can answer part of that. I know we came off of that Master of the Metal tour, or no, it was called Heavy Metal Thunder tour, and that's when Ray was telling us to keep practicing, write some more material, play some local gigs or whatever, and I'll let you guys know when we get another string of shows coming up, and from my perspective, I was waiting for that to happen too. The guitarist that was playing with us, one guy was from Nevada, and the other guy ended up, he was going to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but he was going to university in Iowa for
Excuse me.
medicine.
Yeah, Chicago. He was going into medical school.
Yeah. So, and I remember his parents were pretty upset with him when he's, quit school to play with us, but
Yeah.
he went back to school, and that's what he did. He went back to school in Ohio,
Illinois, I think.
Illinois.
Illinois, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So after that tour, we came back from Europe. He went back
He
to
was leaving, yeah. A lot of
there.
it was,
Yeah. And I remember having a lot of conversations with Charlie on the phone back then too about, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong about this, because I didn't clear this with you earlier, but I think, didn't you move to Florida?
that would have been after
Yeah. Yeah.
quite a bit after, but yeah, I think well, I'm sorry, I'm kind of interrupting you there, but yeah, that was a while after. I'd actually joined got in another band after that. It was very brief, called Steel Angel. I had Rock Angel first and then Steel Angel, and that was Andy Strauss and myself and the original drummer, Dave Daubert. We did.
That's news to me.
Yeah, we did like two gigs. Really, it was about all we did. It was kind of there was one a fairly young kid playing guitar for us too, and it was kind of impromptu, threw it together and played. But anyway, yeah, I moved after that.
Okay.
I guess I don't know my take on the whole question. We had a lot of like we were talking about earlier, temp service jobs, and we were all getting to the age where people are kind of expecting you to have your own apartment, your own car, all that kind of stuff. And it was a lot of financial stress going on at that point.
But I do know that we had signed, part of our contract with Pure Metal was we were supposed to release another album. And I know that we did write some material, and I remember a song that I was working on writing for that album. We didn't record anything, but we were writing it and starting to play it with ourselves. And but we never got word.
In early 1987, the band took a short break from the road to begin writing for their third album, tentatively titled Metal Messiah.
Yes.
They hit the road again, playing some of the new songs in shows in the Midwest and on the East Coast. Does that all sound right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I remember Metal Messiah. In fact, that's one of the songs that short-lived band with Andy, we were doing that song.
Well, yeah, because later it says, where was that at? It says in late 1987, Strauss and, was it Nycary? Is that how you pronounce it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Strauss and Nycary left the band, taking the new material with them. And then it says Messiah Prophet recruited Frank
Caliero,
yeah. and Mark
Yeah.
Zimmerman to finish the tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frank Caliero.
Caliero, yeah. That timeline is difficult for me to remember at this point. I do remember when they left, and then it was after that, I think, that Andy and I had done that short-lived band thing. I think that was after they left.
Okay.
Wow, this is really going back.
Yeah, this is just like I said, this is what's written in the Messiah Prophet write up on Wikipedia. So
Well, that's editable, so we can change it.
yeah, it is. But yeah, I just wanted to know how accurate that sounded, you know, and
I think reasonably accurate. Yeah.
yeah.
Do you all have any type of recordings from anything after Master of the Metal? I mean, any way, any form of recording of new material?
No, definitely
No.
don't. No.
No.
Being exposed to it. I mean, I remember playing Metal Messiah. That's the only one I actually remember playing. No. There was one. So I might be confusing it with Andy. What did we call ourselves? Steel Angel. We did one called East Coast Rocker. Did we do that, David?
No.
Something called East Coast Rocker? No.
No.
Yeah. So that's a little bit. That's blurry for me.
I do remember there was one song that I wrote that we had rehearsed. We hadn't recorded it or laid down any tracks to it, but it was called Unchained.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah,
Sort of.
because it actually tied in with, there were some shirts that we had that said Messiah Prophet, and there were chains on it, and they were broken.
I don't remember how to play it, but it sounds familiar.
Yeah. I remember. Let me see if I can remember the lyrics. It was it went something to the effect, chained to the darkness, believing, chained. Oh,
Can't help
it was
you,
like
man. Can't
chained
help
to
you.
the darkness. It was like chained to the darkness. Believe it's the light. And then basically the chains are broken, and then it was unchained. Oh, unchained. Yeah.
Don't remember it. The title sounds familiar, but
Yeah.
about one too many years behind me now. Would have caught me last year, I would have had it, but
"36 years ago, this was released in '86. If my math is correct, we could round
that
that up
hurts.
to 40.
That hurts, brother.
So I remember, though, I was 15 when I first heard this album. I'm just a month shy of being 51 now. I remember hearing the intro to Hit and Run
Yeah.
with the drums, you, David,
Yeah.
on the thunder drums, and then Joe's coming in with the bass, and we got the guitar.
And the sirens going.
Yeah, the sirens. And I'm like, this is shaping up really quick to be a killer tune, and I hope
Yeah.
it's a killer album. And I was not disappointed, but I remember thinking, okay, it's kicked in on Hit and Run, but I have yet to hear the vocals. And then Charlie Clark comes in. And I remember thinking, who else sounds like this? And it sounded so awesome, guys. You all brought the power metal. Charlie brought his unique, one-of-a-kind vocal delivery. And again, guys, I heard this album before I heard this. So this was my first exposure to you guys and to Charlie's vocals. Gentlemen, Charlie's life here on Earth, October the 8th of 1962 through January the 6th of 2018. And that dash in there is a lot of living, and it's still in the Lord everlasting. Joe and David, please tell us about your friend, Messiah Prophet's extraordinary vocalist, Charles Charlie Clark, because we wish to respectfully remember him.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Excuse me if I start getting emotional.
Yeah, I was feeling the same way just hearing that.
He still had that fire, that light, that passion, that commitment
Yeah.
that he always had. He's an easy guy to talk with. I mean, his conviction and his commitment to the Lord was bar none. He was
He was always up.
yeah,
He-
yeah,
I mean, yeah, well, all of us had our moments when we were just frustrated on the road or whatever, but he was always up. And even through that sickness, he was always up. I
yeah,
mean, you'd walk in there and the guy, he was losing muscular control, but he was still happy.
yeah,
It was mind boggling to see that.
Do you all
yeah.
think maybe he
Oh.
had the peace that passes understanding and the joy of the Lord through it all, you know?
Yeah, I think he most definitely did.
Yeah.
I remember one time Joe and I actually went with him to his church, and um, seeing him and just running up to him, and embracing him, and then we went out to lunch afterwards, and he was he rode in the car with me. I don't know why we broke up with with why his wife didn't Jill didn't drive with Charlie or the kids or whatever. I don't know how, but Charlie ended up riding with me and my wife out for lunch, and just to have him sitting there beside me, and talking and telling stories, and it's just was unbearable to
Mhm.
see my friend in that state. But when he spoke with me and I didn't quite understand what he said, and I said, Charlie, don't, forgive me, and he was like, still, he was that up,
Yeah,
positive
he would laugh
spirit.
about it. If you
He'd
couldn't
go,
understand him, he'd start laughing and here, let me try again, and
yeah. And then he would like,
always.
talk again, but like one word or even one syllable at a time
Mhm.
to convey what he was saying. But I love that man. I love him to this day.
Crazy thing was it, well, like I said, he lived a distance north of us, and we didn't really keep in tight contact. And I bumped into Bill Grabowski in a cafe in Lancaster. He was playing with a band. I can't remember the name of it anymore, but he asked, he just came up to me and he said, "Did you hear about Charlie?" I said, "Well, what about him?" And that was the first, Charlie kept us all under wraps. I mean, nobody knew about it. At least I didn't. And, you know, so going from, thinking of him as he was on stage, doing backflips and just being an amazing front man, and
Yeah.
hearing that and then going to see him, it was kind of devastating, actually.
Was
Um,
was Charlie
but
a
he was
pastor?
always up. No, I don't think so.
Well,
Oh, he was not a pastor. He was an elder, and
Yeah, I think
at
he
his
was
church.
a youth leader too for a while, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
well, maybe that's what I was thinking of as far as ministry wise. And gentlemen, the only reason, I've never got to see you all in concert. I never got to meet Charlie. I've been blessed today to meet you two through this interview, but you guys have all in Messiah Prophet ministered to us, and Charlie, whether it's the drums, the thunder drums, or the laying down the groove, the bass, Joe, or Charlie's vocals, or the guitars of Brian, and Andy. I mean, you guys are still ministering to us. This is still revered, and the word of the Lord is in this album and this album too. And that's the main thing. And we just want to, show our appreciation for everybody in Messiah Prophet, as we know you guys, and thank each and every one of you for ministering to us. And I never got to meet Charlie, so it was just like, hey, you know, tell me a little bit about your friend so that I can kind of maybe know who the person that he was. So
Yeah, but he was laid back, real easygoing guy. You know, he wasn't he wasn't proud, wasn't arrogant. You
Oh,
know,
no, he is
he didn't.
absolutely humble.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, there was no, you know, ego there about, you know, I'm the singer from Messiah Prophet. You know, none of that. It was just very. He was a meek man, but very convicted, very sold out, you know, to the Lord guy.
Mhm. Very definitely. Very
Yeah.
definitely.
Joe and David, if you could each make a brief statement to leave a lasting impression with your fans, what would you wish to tell them?
Joe, you want to go first?
Oh, well, I was busy thinking. I thought you'd go first. um, well, I'd express my gratitude definitely for, you know, being there way back then. And I mean, there's some people that apparently didn't see it. Well, you didn't see us back then, I guess, right? Thank you
Never
all
came to
for.
Arkansas.
Oh man,
You
you
know,
gotta
just
rub that in.
so grateful for all the support and like I said earlier, it might have been off camera, I'm not sure, or off record, but it was only a few years ago that I found out that people are still talking about Messiah Prophet. I had no idea, none whatsoever. So I'm very grateful for that. And, you know, you guys here and other people have told me that we ministered, made a difference, and that's the best compliment I could ever get. So thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, I just feel again, echoing what Joe just said. I feel very honored that, you know, you said that Master of the Metal is revered. I want to say a huge thank you and much gratitude for your fans and our fans out there that are still listening to that album over and over again and wondering where we are and what we've been up to, and know that you know, my conviction and my you know, lifestyle hasn't changed. I mean, it's kind of funny. You think of these guys on stage and stuff as one thing, and you almost kind of envision what their, you know, their private life would be. But you know, we're all humble guys. You know, we all came and lived very, you know, meek and mild mannered lives. It's just, you know, put those guitars and that drum in front of me, and you know, and that message that we were playing and delivering, and with Charlie's vocals, it, it, I just I feel humbled, and I want to thank you all so very much for keeping us alive and remembering us.
Joe and David, before
There's something I did want to add, if I could take another moment.
Mhm.
Joe and I talked about this like 3 years ago, and I saw Brian, and I talked with him about it. When when Joe and I went up before Charlie had passed, we were at his church, and you know, during the songs, you know, while they're doing worship songs and stuff, his daughter Becca was sitting kind of diagonally in front of us, and Joe elbows me, and he's like, "Do you hear her vocals? She's, you know, like she got killer vocals." And so I just kind of dialed in, and she's really an amazing, you know, young lady, vocalist, singer, and still has that passion. In fact, her and her husband have a daughter, their first baby, and it's a little girl, and they named her Charlie, Charli. And there was some chat about the potential, the possibility of maybe redoing Master of the Metal on our terms, and we'd call it like remaster of the metal, and have Becca sing all of Charlie's parts. That never came into fruition, and if there's any producers or anybody out there that would be interested in that, I know, Brian, I know when I talked with Brian about it, he said that he would definitely be game for it, because he we all feel so strongly about Charlie.
And those vocals were exactly where they needed to be.
Yeah,
It was stunning.
Charlie, yeah, it was amazing to hear her sing. And what kind of put the nail in the coffin, no pun intended, is when we were at Charlie's funeral, I was sitting next to Andy. Andy was sitting on my right. And Charlie's oldest daughter, Rachel, played keys, and Becca sang this song, this Messiah Prophet song, at his funeral, the one that Andy wrote, and one of the ones, and he was just crying. He was crying, and I remember putting my arm around him and just giving him, some comfort and support, and because he didn't even know it, that they were going to be doing that song at Charlie's funeral. So, I still play drums, and I just actually got a new kit over Christmas, this past Christmas, and but I owe a tremendous amount to Charlie Clark for my music, background and my history.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you so much, David, and all the Messiah
Very
prophets.
welcome.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Very welcome.
Mike, take us home with some scripture, buddy.
Okay, in honor of the name of the band, I'm taking us to Matthew chapter 16, starting in verse 13. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven."
Amen. Amen.
The revelation of Jesus Christ as more than a prophet, but the Messiah.
Yeah, that's right.
Joe,
Thank you.
Thank you all again for blessing us with the fellowship today.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you for having us. It's been an
It was a
honor.
lot of fun.
Really.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And we will say goodbye to our viewers. We'll wave goodbye to them. But if you don't mind, stick around for one more moment when we sign off, please.
Not a problem.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah.
Jesus is master of the metal. God gave rock and roll